it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Foley is Pod. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, the hardcore legend, Mr. Mick Foley. Mick, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Conrad. I'm doing great. In the interest of full disclosure, we're taping this the day before the big fundraiser for Steve McMichael.
Yep.
I'm just really excited to be here. It's a great gathering of people all here for a good cause. And I've got my manager, Barry Bloom, longtime manager, his son, David, who will be in the upcoming movie about Al Yankovic, playing the young Al Yankovic.
How about that?
How
Got
cool
some
is
Hollywood
that?
royalty amongst
Yeah.
us. Wrestling's own super agent and a young Weird Al. Come on.
And D, maybe a little later, I'll do one of my song parodies, and you can see how I'm doing.
As a reminder, we're all here in Chicago to raise money for Mongo. Please consider making a donation at moneyformongo.com. And by the time you're watching this, our super show with Ric Flair, Jeff Jarrett, Tony Schiavone, Jim Ross, Mick Foley. My gosh, how many folks can we fit in one wrestling ring? All for a great cause. Mongo's in the fight of his life for ALS. I know you're a big guy who has a heart for giving, but ALS, man, tough.
It's so devastating. It is devastating. I showed the photos to my youngest son and my wife. I couldn't believe it, especially when I showed her Mongo in his prime with the Chicago Bears, and she didn't know that much about it. I said, what's particularly devastating is you are 100% aware that you're losing your physical faculties, but yet I was talking with Eric Bischoff about it, and he's still got that great attitude. He's, Eric says he's about 80 pounds now, but you still see the light shining in his eyes. So I know by the time people see this, we will have done our fundraiser, but still Mongo, moneyformongo.com, and every little bit helps. It really does.
Absolutely. I want to remind you, it's free on Fight.
Yeah.
We're not charging you, but boy, we sure would appreciate it if you would make a donation at moneyformongo.com. You can also probably check it out on YouTube by now, but it's important that we remember why we're here, and that's moneyformongo.com. But today, our topic is when you left the WWE and joined TNA. And you've wrote about it in your book before, or written about it in your book before.
But very few people read that book, so it's news to them, right?
You had some ups and downs with Vince McMahon.
I did.
Over the years.
Yeah.
And, we've just expressed in the last couple of weeks how important he was in the story of not only your life, but your family's life, and what a big difference, his influence on your life made.
Yeah.
But once upon a time, maybe it wasn't as fun. And a lot of this probably happens around your ability to do commentary for the company.
Yes.
And you wrote down all of your thoughts in the great book, Countdown to Lockdown, that this was Vince's idea in April of 2008 to bring you in as an announcer. How did that come to be? Were you excited about the opportunity to step into that? And what had you heard about being produced by Vince McMahon?
I had heard it was difficult. I heard he was in your ear. And so I was in a movie that was produced by Vince's daughter-in-law, Shane's wife, Marissa. Great person, and I played a little role. I went in one day, I did 20 scenes with Willem Dafoe. We ate lunch and never saw him again, but I had a magnificent time, and I went to the premiere, and that's where I ran into Vince. I appreciate you doing this, Marissa. Hey, glad to do it. How would you feel about doing commentary? And to this day, I don't know if it had been on his mind or if he just said it the moment he saw me. And I said, I don't know, Vince. I've heard about you and those headphones. I'm getting better. All right. I'm going to give it a try. Now, I should say that prior to this, I'd had a meeting with Jeff Jarrett 3 years earlier. And I remember Raven, Scotty Levy, saying to me, if you could come in and help put this company, which was pretty new at the time, TNA, help put them on the map, it would dwarf anything else you've done in the wrestling business. And I really thought about that. And so what I did is Jeff and I were talking. I had my man Barry, who's my bad guy. He's the bad cop. I'm the good cop. He's the bad cop. And we did go to Vince and say, look, I've got this offer. And the next thing you know, I've got a contract for 3 years to do 3 or 4 matches a year. And that went well. So now jump forward.
Hey, I don't want to jump.
Okay.
I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to ask, because you've mentioned that before, that you had a pretty good offer to work a handful of matches a year. I didn't know that was born out of you having a conversation with TNA.
When I told Vince that I was interested in doing a few things, because I'd had the 2004 match with Randy, which was, to this day, Randy considers it the best match of his career, which is really saying something. But it was as good as I'd ever been. So that was, and I helped build a program and helped that character, while also, giving myself like the one real comeback you get, because I believe that you get the one real comeback, and I'm including Backlash because I felt like I came up a little short at Mania. Just was in awe of just how immense it was. I'm teaming up with The Rock, and I see Rick in the ring, and he's got it. He was one of those few guys who had that it thing every time he was in the ring. He came alive in a way that I wish I could. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. But Rick always came alive, and I just kind of shrunk. I played it so safe. Like, I actually said a prayer out loud. I said, please, God, don't let me suck. That's not exactly shooting for the stars, right?
Right.
It's like wishing to clang a last second jumper off the rim or fly out to left field. And that's not how you get, it's not how you get to the WWE Hall of Fame. It's not how I got to where I was. And I was so let down because I'd worked so hard. I'd lost 60 pounds. Came back, and we've talked about Backlash, so we're not going to talk about that in depth, but it was as good as I'd ever been. So 1 year later, it's still kind of fresh in their mind that I can come out and be this utility guy who steps in. And I did have some, 1 year later, I had the big match with Edge and a feud with Rick, culminating a really bloody, pretty memorable I Quit match. So I was somebody that could still deliver at that time, could still deliver on a sporadic basis. But once I got those headsets on, all was good, right? Loved it at first. Like, and I would carry around a notebook, and I would be going up to the guys saying, okay, what are you trying to, asking them the questions that I
wish someone asked you.
I used to come up, and this is what I'm trying to get across. And it was seen as, whoa, don't tell us how to do our job, but I think we should be working together to come out with the best possible outcomes. And I had all kinds of notes and little, not necessarily catchphrases, but you have to be quick. And it's a never-ending job where you're only as good as your last call. You've got to be on the money for 2 hours on a TV show, 3 hours on a pay-per-view. And I thought I was doing pretty well until the San Diego pay-per-view. I don't know the name of it, but that was the first time I had the F-bomb dropped upon me on my headsets. And I just did not take kindly to it. It was repetitive. I'd learned as a writer not to use a $10 word when a 10-cent word will do. And if you're talking about animosity, that's what you're talking about, unbridled hatred, right? Hate is the word. Mm-hmm. Animosity is a fancy word for hate. So I said, let me tell you. So this is where Shawn Michaels had this great angle. I thought it was a really great, underrated angle with Batista, where Shawn had feigned an injury to gain a victory, and then he kind of rubbed Dave's face in it. And so they had, like I said, I thought, an underrated, really heated, short rivalry that culminated with this stretcher match. And during the course of the stretcher match, I said, look at Batista's face. It's nothing but pure hatred, a mask of unbridled hatred. And then I hear that voice go, that's enough with that effing hate word. And I went, I'm not used to being treated like this, right? And there were like 4 or 5 others dropped in my ear. It was completely new to me because I'd been told it was not part of the job anymore.
Right.
So my wife and 2 smaller kids, Mickey and Huey, they were just kids there. 2008, that was 14 years ago. So they were 7 and 5. They fly out to San Diego, and you know me a while now. Barry, how many times have you seen me with a drink in my hand over the course of our 22 2 years
I've never
together.
seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have one every now and then, but it's very rare. And there's only 2 reasons I would ever drink: celebrate something or to commiserate, So my wife hears those little 1 ounce bottles like clinking together as I walk in. She goes, "It went that good, huh?" And I went,
Oh, wow.
"No." And she goes, "What happened?" I kind of spilled the story to her. So the next day, keep in mind, I'm the SmackDown announcer. We tape on Tuesdays, so I have Monday off. I do call Vince strategically at a time when I think he's least likely to pick up, so I can leave a message.
Right.
And just say, "Vince, this is Mick Foley." And I think he picks up right away. It's not while I'm leaving. "Hello," I said, "Vince, this is Mick. Mick, how are you?" I said, "Not too good, Vince. I just want you to know I can't remember the last time I was treated so disrespectfully, and if that's part of the job description, you need to give it to somebody else." And he goes, "Mick, that was my bad. I was having a bad day, and I took it out on you and asking you to let me make it up to you." I said, "Okay." I said, "Vince, let me tell you something. After SmackDown, I'm going to Disneyland with my kids, and I can't let anyone, even you, mess up my Disney vacation." And okay, hang up the phone, and my wife looks at me and goes, "You sound fucking crazy."
Yes. The rare F-bomb here on Foley's pod. We almost never hear it.
Never here.
But with Mrs. Foley, she gets a pass.
Yeah, she dropped it. I'm just quoting my wife because I sounded so passionate about Disney, but it was true. I wasn't going to let anybody mess with that. So we check in. This is where I was splurging for the Grand Californian. This isn't 97 anymore. I'm getting the
No
$30,
Best Western here.
The $30 Best Western in Kissimmee, and we're eating the 2 donuts and taking the ferry over to the Magic Kingdom. This is Grand Californian, where you walk out the exit and you're at the California Adventure, the sister park. And as I'm parking the car in self-parking, no valet.
Some
for this
things
guy.
never change.
Some things never change. I get a phone call from Scott Fishman with TNA, who I had known from doing Robot Wars. And he said, "We just want to know if you might be interested in working with TNA." And Conrad, if he'd called me 2 days earlier, I would have said, "No, I'm good exactly where I am." And I said to him, "I might be." And we held off for a little bit on any kind of meeting. Sure enough, all was well in paradise for about 4 weeks. And then the next time I got the F-bomb, and look, this is what I said in my book. And what I'm a little trepidatious about in this podcast, I would be criticizing people who I really like.
Right.
Being Vince and Dixie, and hopefully I temper the criticism with, really, I think, obvious fondness for both of them. But in this case, as soon as I heard that next F-bomb, I thought, "Ooh, this isn't a one-off. This is an abusive relationship." And I hate to say that now, but I wrote it in the book, and that's the way it felt to me.
Well, you're not the first person to say it. I mean, that narrative's been out there.
And the thing that, what really got me after that point was I stopped writing the notes. I stopped talking to the guys. I stopped going to the booking meetings because I think it's almost like a survival mechanism that you will not allow someone to tear you down at your best. So when I wrote the novel Scooter, came out in 2005, but both Tatum Brown and Scooter were written within like 2 months of each other at the end of 2001. I write about this kid going out for the baseball team, despite the fact that he would be called, at the time, a dirtbag. He smoked cigarettes, he had long hair, but he had a titanic prowess. You remember, right, the baseball novel? But when he goes out for the team with a butt, with his Chuck Taylors. He's a little, I always, in the 2 novels I wrote, I gave the characters, part of the physical Foley look. So he's missing an ear. And his feeling was they might cut him, but they weren't going to cut him at his best. Like he wasn't going to give them the very best he had, because that, I think, you give all of yourself, whether it's in a relationship or an announcing job, and you get spurned. That's really much more painful than if you don't present the best side of yourself. So I just remember saying to, I wish I remember one of the producers said, "How's it going?" I said, "This is the least important thing I've ever done in my life." Like, it just really felt meaningless.
All right, listen up, football fans. The first Sunday of the NFL season is finally here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is giving new customers a can't-miss offer to celebrate the return of the NFL season. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. And as an added bonus for week 1, everyone can experience the thrill of DraftKings early win promotion. It's simple. You bet on an NFL team to win, and if your team leads by 10 points at any point during the game, you get paid instantly, even if your team loses. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code Foley to get $200 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet this Sunday. That's code Foley only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
There was this great episode of Raw where Edge was marrying Vicky Guerrero, and Edge was 100% in on everything he did. So when Edge retired, which we thought for good, I remember writing an article and saying he embraced the ridiculous, like no matter what was given to him. And I think guys that, embody that of the current roster, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, you give them a little bit and they're going to turn it into gold. So that was Edge, and I'm watching their first dance as a married couple, Edge and Vicky. And after 3 minutes of silence, I go, "Wow, this is really special." And then I hear, "Lay out, God." And I just thought, why am I still sitting here?
Yeah.
Why am I sitting here? Why am I not walking out on national TV? So if you remember Layla L from her tag team with Michelle McCool, to this day, I believe she feels like I am the meanest, scariest wrestler she's ever seen. They said, "You don't know Mick." She's like, no, you don't know Mick. She's basing it on me walking through the gorilla position, lighting into Vince and saying, "I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you have. You will never talk to me that way again. You got it." And off I went. And I called one more match, which was, it was Edge and Undertaker in a ladder match, I believe. Paid tables, ladders, and chairs. And I almost got out of that situation without seeing Vince the whole day. But I had my kids with me. It was Nassau Coliseum, which is about 30 minutes from my house at the time. And they saw the craft table, right? They make a beeline, and the craft table at the Coliseum was right in front of Mr. McMahon's office, and he walked out. "Mick, I know you don't like me, but I'm asking you to gut this one out." And I was like, this is not about guts. This is about being treated in the way that I think a human being should be treated. And so I had given my notice, and
you officially gave notice, or he kind of knew?
Officially gave the notice. I made it really clear that if that was part of the job, I didn't want any part of it. And Vince, he tried to. This is where I'm hesitant, because Vince had, he's imagine going through a tough time. I tried to text him for his birthday, and that's the WWE number, so it's not working anymore.
Yeah.
But I said, "Vince, what's the end game here? If I work hard at this for 10 years and I get as good as I can possibly be, you'll treat me the way you treat JR?"
Oh.
And then he gets about this close. He goes, "You think I've been bad to him?" I said, "I think you've made his life a lot more difficult than it needed to be." And that was really, it was tense, right? And the next time I talked to Vince is when Barry Bloom told me, "Hey, the word has gotten out that Vince knows you're going to TNA." And right before I called Vince, John Laurinaitis called me. "Hey, Max, Johnny, just want you to know, no hard feelings, bridges burned." And I thank you, Johnny. And I called up Vince, and I really had tears in my eyes. I went downstairs in the basement, and I said, "Vince, I just want you to know you're one of the most important men, most important people in my entire life." And I always told him I consider him to be on the level of presidents. Well, I appreciate that, Mick. And then we didn't talk for another year and a half. But I was off and embarking on a new adventure.
It's interesting because sometimes we hear the story from folks who want their release, who want to leave WWE, and they're not allowed to. You know, well, you signed a contract, you're going to have to honor it, and if you're not working, you're just going to sit home, sort of thing. Did you have that in your contract where you could leave, or was there just a gentleman's understanding because of all you had done?
My contract was running out. So it was coming to an end in September, and that's when I ended up leaving at the end of my contract. I will tell you that when I was a GM and I had Barry work at the deal, I said, I don't want I don't want a contract. I want a handshake, and that we will continue to work as long as it's mutually enjoyable for both of us. And I remember when I finally had the x-rays done of my hip, because I thought that would have been plaguing me had been a back injury. And then I found out that a really bad hip can mimic sciatic nerve injury. And it was like, I felt the weight of the world off my shoulders when I saw that x-ray and saw how bad it was, you know. And so I haven't been imagining this. And the orthopedic guy, because I've been doing this 25 years, this is one of the worst hips I've ever seen. To be honest, I don't know how you're still walking. So first thing I did, I texted Stephanie, you know, who was my commissioner. I said, Steph, I said, I need to get this thing taken care of, because I would literally, I don't want people to feel bad for me, because I knew what I was signing up for.
Right.
But yeah, now I'm hitting my 40s and I'm really hurting. And so just every plane ride was agonizing, you know. I think I told you I'd get the bottle of water, I'd put it under my hamstring, and the whole flight, no matter if it was 1 hour or 5 hours, just roll it, trying to assuage these awful nerve pains I had. So when I see, well, there's an answer to this, it really was amazing. But the deal was, you can't fly for 6 weeks because of the dangers of blood clotting. And I did. I mean, there's a very real part of me that loves Vince, but I understand that I serve at his pleasure. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, you know, I stopped being the shiny toy, and Kurt Angle became the new shiny toy.
Yes.
So they went from saying, well, the job will be mixed when he comes back, to me being replaced as GM. And I was okay with that, because it was just the nonstop travel. Even though you look at it and you go, well, you're working 1 day a week. It's like, that's really 3. Kind of working 3 days a week. And I'm going through different time zones, and I'm in agony, and it's really difficult. And the GM job was not as fun as the commissioner job had been, you know, 17 years earlier. But I digress. We were talking about TNA.
Well, yeah, listen, I wanted to talk a little bit about how this all came to be. When you're having this meeting with, I guess at the time it wasn't TNA or TNN, they had just become Spike. You're talking with Scott Fishman. Does he have an idea for what does he want you to be a GM, a wrestler?
Here's the deal. I can't remember if it was Scott who told me or if it was Jeff who called me, Jeff Jarrett, in a follow-up call. But they said, here's the deal. We want you to show up and say, I'm Mick Foley. I just purchased the X Division. And I said, I'm in. Like, I like that a lot. And then I went to Nashville. I met with Jeff and Dutch. And maybe Scott DeMore. I can't remember. There was one other person in there. And they said, listen, we still want to do the X Division, but we feel like we need to get a little more brand recognition before we do that. And that's when the idea came up for me to be the majority shareholder, with the backstory being that I've been so thrifty.
I love that.
That I somehow had enough money to buy a wrestling company.
So listen, I want to sort of state the obvious here. You had, for lack of a better word, played both sides against the middle 3 years prior.
So what I said to Jeff when we talked again, I said, Jeff, when I spoke to him, I remember meeting him at the Hilton Long Island in Melville, New York. It's a center of Long Island. I said, Jeff, I really like this, but I'm going to have to go to Vince, and if he makes me a deal, I can't. He goes, I understand completely. So now 3 years later, I said, Jeff, here's the deal. We come up with a deal. I'm not playing two companies off each other. I said, you make me a deal I'm happy with, then I'm in. And so Barry was able to work out a good deal that called for only 3 matches a year for 3 years. Somehow I'd gone to do 28 matches for no additional money. Because in the spirit
How
of
frustrated was Barry through all that? What do you mean you won't play both sides against the middle? What do you mean you're wrestling 7 times more than you said? Why am I here, Mick? Let me do my job. I'm supposed to be the bad cop. That's the deal. Stop giving away the store.
It was so hard because at the time it sounds funny to say because I don't think people look at TNA like it was a rating success.
Right.
But we were doing 1.2s, 1.3s. There was that one night where we went to Monday nights and we nearly beat, don't quote me on this, but
you had a great night.
Strong performance. I remember thinking to myself that I think we did it twice. And the next time we ran Monday nights, everyone was ecstatic. And I remember going back to my hotel and I just thought, we just did 6 months of TV in one night. And there was every surprise in the book, from the return of Jeff Hardy, the return
Hulk
of
Hogan
Ric
and
Flair.
Ric Flair the same night.
The same night, right?
Yeah.
And now what it did to me was it took me from being the non-wrestling mouthpiece to being one of 4 guys with the same title.
Yeah.
And, he's Hulk Hogan, right? Biggest, 1 or 2 or 3, Rock, Steve, but he's in that conversation for biggest box office
When
draw.
you broke in, he was.
Yes.
Yes.
He was. And I know we're kind of just easing over my first year there where I was really happy. But after year 1, there didn't seem to be a lot of use for me.
Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. I got to tell you, there's been a few times in my life where I felt like, life was not going according to plan. I had a personal relationship that went sideways on me. Gosh, what was it now? 2006. And I didn't know how to sort of pick up the pieces and move forward with that with a better mindset. Well, BetterHelp can help you if you're in a tough situation. And it can be tough to sort of train your brain to stay in that problem-solving mode, especially when you're faced with a challenge in life. But when you learn how to find your own solutions, man, there's no better feeling. A therapist can help you become a better problem solver, making it easier to accomplish your goals, no matter how big or small. That was certainly my experience back in 2006. And I challenge you to consider BetterHelp if you're in a similar situation. I was looking to figure out, hey, what's next for my life? Everything seems to have changed, and I'm not sure how to move forward. I needed to talk to somebody who wasn't in my immediate circle and to just sort of sort it out in my brain, if that makes sense. Let me say this. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, it's accessible, it's affordable, and it's entirely online. You can get matched with a therapist after filling out a brief survey, and you can even switch therapists at any time. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can help you get there. Visit BetterHelp.com/Foley today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/Foley. BetterHelp.com/Foley. Before we get ahead, I want to remind everybody that while you were working for the WWE in a commentary position, TNA quietly built, one heck of a roster. Booker T, Christian Cage, Rhino, Kevin Nash, Kurt Angle, Team 3D, and they're still building folks like Samoa Joe, Robert Roode, AJ Styles, Awesome Kong, the Knockouts division, LAX. This is a loaded roster. What did you think the ceiling was, not a year in, but when you're first having these conversations and you're meeting, you even wrote in your book, in all my years at WWE, I'd never met with any type of television executive. And now here you are getting the opportunity to get FaceTime with Kevin K. It had to feel like, boy, the company's putting a lot of faith and confidence in me, and the network's really behind it. Were you optimistic that they could ever maybe get to, I don't know, maybe where AEW is today?
I just thought the inner mechanisms of WWE were too awesome to try to compete with on this.
Too big of a head start.
Yeah. So when I was doing publicity, I was talking about Dixie's dad was Bob, I believe Bob Carter.
That's right.
Who made a lot of money in alternative energy. And so I would say, look, you're not going to out-drill ExxonMobil, but there's other ways to, be in the energy game. And I would say, hey, the New York Yankees might be the best-known team, but that doesn't mean the Rays didn't have a better season. But these things that seem to make sense is we're going to be an alternative. But I think, with the Monday night, we did Monday nights after the second successful outing. We went head-to-head. And got our asses handed to us.
Yeah.
And went back to, I guess, Tuesday nights or Thursday. And I just thought that's not realistic. We can't compete with what they have, with just the mechanism. It's an awesome. Look, WWE, for all the things people want to knock him for, and look, Kevin Dunn gets knocked for switching shots too much.
It's not even him.
Is that?
No. That's not what his job is.
But I'll tell you what, they never miss a shot. So no matter what goes on, if it looks good, boom, you're getting the replay. So I wasn't used to cameras not getting shots because I'd been spoiled so much. I loved. There's so much to talk about. We're going to condensing it into one episode, but I love the camaraderie with Jeremy Borash, the tweak and tweak connection, the heel turn with Sting, kind of invading Jeff Jarrett's space, almost like a cuckoo bird. Yes, cuckoo, right? Is the bird that takes over the nest of others. Yeah,
I thought that was the funny clock bird.
It is, but it's a real right. Is the movie with Demi Moore and Woody Harrelson? Doesn't he compare Robert Redford to being like the cuckoo?
Indecent Proposal.
Indecent Proposal. I think he compares Redford to being a cuckoo who takes over the nest of another bird. So that was me kind of coming in little by little, taking over Jeff's office. And I thought it was really well done. And I thought that some of the promos I did leading up to the big match with Sting were some of the best things I had done, including there was one promo where Vince Russo tells me, he goes, you're going to come out and you are going to, Dude Love is going to interview, or Mick Foley's going to interview Cactus Jack. And bro, you are going to be messing with his mind. This is all a mind game. And I said, Vince, I think I can play this straight. He goes, what do you mean, bro? I said, and there's the line where I gave to Sting where he comes out, he goes, I'm not sure if I believe what I just saw, but I believe that you believe what I just seen. And so I think the performance was such, I got a standing ovation when I came back through the curtain, which doesn't usually happen after a promo. But it was really pretty haunting and pretty disturbing where Cactus Jack is interviewed and he doesn't care for Mick Foley, what I've become. And so there was this element of danger where it ended up where I'm putting the boots, and I would at that time drop a nice looking forearm. I would drop down to my knees and no one else was doing it. Really basic, but it was a nice looking thing. And I was really limited by the time physically. Back was I was in a lot of pain. Couldn't work out like I wanted to because I was always just exacerbating injuries. But for those few weeks, I think I looked like somebody who you needed to look out for. And I was changing the music. I was like, I can do anything I want here. Give me a little Curry Man.
I love it.
And I was putting the boots to Sting, and we went off the air, and it was like, I think this guy, it was enough to raise questions, to where you suspend disbelief and you're like, I know these guys are older and they had their big feud 20 years ago, but I can buy into this. And I thought we set the table pretty nicely.
We're going to talk about all of your time in TNA and sort of break all that down in the months and hopefully years to come. But today, when we're focusing on mostly your jump, I do want to ask, you had spent time with Jeff Jarrett in locker rooms and on road trips and putting together matches and whatnot. Now you're dealing with Jeff the businessman. Mm-hmm. How was he to deal with in that capacity?
Jeff does a podcast with you, right?
He does.
He was awesome.
Well, listen, he himself admits at times, maybe not so much.
No, Jeff was going through a tough time. His wife had passed away.
That's right.
He was the founder of TNA. I mean, Jeff, I think he's been pretty...
he's been totally open
about the problem we had. I'd never seen Jeff when he'd been drinking. And it didn't interfere with his job. It was after hours. But, you know, I saw that side of Jeff. And, you know, my heart went out to him because of what he'd been through. And, you know, he was anesthetizing the pain, you know, with some drink. But I enjoyed working with Jeff. I enjoyed the you know, the conflict and the struggle for supremacy there. I remember, I know I'm kind of jumping around here talking about Kurt because I was terrified of Kurt. I like Kurt, still do, but he's a machine.
He is.
And I thought he was going to expose my cardio problem, which was back related. I couldn't, you know, it was a big difference between the 2004 Mick Foley returned to wrestle Randy Orton and the 2008 Mick Foley couldn't quite get under 290, you know, because I couldn't. History had shown me, maybe this is me making an excuse for myself, but I could not work out hard or else I would injure myself. And I remember in 2006, I described it when I felt my back go out on me, like it was someone opened up a spigot into my buttocks and poured scalding water down it. Wow. It was one of the most painful things I've ever been through in my life. But I enjoyed working with Jeff. I really thoroughly enjoyed my first year there. I felt like I was getting a chance to do good promos. And you know, the big problem was it was a great first year with nothing to do following that. There was really just no position.
Look, you wrote in your book that after you first start negotiations with TNA, they kind of go radio silent for a few weeks. Considering your stature in the business, that had to be a little surprising, especially knowing that you had, at that point, met with the TV executives and whatnot. What'd you make of that? They were trying to find the right role, the right creative, or they were trying to find the money?
I don't remember being overly concerned because I had Barry Bloom on my side.
Super agent.
And a super agent. And I had things I was doing outside. This is 2008. Yeah, I was doing okay. Where I started having problems, Conrad, was that I started looking, kind of ignoring the fact that I was getting concussed in just about every comeback match I had. So my biggest regret when I was in TNA is that when I was writing the book, Countdown to Lockdown, this is the build up to my big match with Sting in September of 2008. I win the title that evening, and I go on to defend it for another 6 weeks or so. And the next pay-per-view, I believe, is King of the Mountain. And during the course of King of the Mountain, I got rattled. My brain got rattled 3 different times. And remember when went back when I was in Australia a couple weeks ago, and we did the back and to the left with Booker T?
Yes. And
I'm not knocking Bookers. This is one of those things that happens. But I was like, okay, I feel a little woozy. That's why. I can directly correlate the kick to where I felt a little out of it. But in this case, 3 different times I get my bell rung, I see stars, what have you. And when I watch the match back, I'm going, okay, they must have missed the camera angle there. And then there was one, it was just Samoa Joe giving me forearms, but I'm seeing stars. And I was like, he must have really laid it in. I'm looking like, that doesn't look, there was always a reason for the concussion prior to that. And then I find myself writing the sentence, I had to accept that it took less and less to hurt me worse and worse for longer and longer periods of time.
Wow.
And my big regret is that the moment I put the period on that sentence, that I didn't retire and say, I should never be in the ring again. Because I was on to the problem, which was, it didn't take much. You get up there in your 40s and you can't take the punishment you did in your 20s, your 30s. And I was still trying to give people those, those classic matches. And now my cardio is all but non-existent. So I have to come up with creative ways. And a lot of that involves, some really impactful stuff.
I want to ask about a name in my research I'd never heard before. Meltzer would write, unless there's an 11th hour reconciliation, which at least at press time seemed unlikely, Foley will be a free agent from WWE and be booked through Elaine Gillespie, ironically the same woman who's now booking Ric Flair and Roddy Piper. And of course, eventually he would confirm that you had signed a short-term deal with TNA, he being Dave Meltzer, and will be starting imminently. Foley and his management group, the Gillespie Agency. I've never heard of, or I don't remember hearing of Elaine Gillespie. What can you tell us about her?
I was in conversations with Elaine. I remember Rick calling me up, and Rick and I have got the nice checkered history. He was like, "You're gonna," and I'm not gonna do Rick's voice because it sounds like I'm mocking him, right?
I'll do it anyway. He won't listen. He's fine with it. You're gonna love her, brother.
He goes, Cactus Jack, you're gonna love me. You're gonna love me. And he told me about this Elaine Gillespie. We only did a couple things because Barry was always my guy. That didn't,
of course,
signings, whatnot. But it never really happened. It may be for 3 weeks or a month. But the things I was really working on, I had a chance to do stand up in 2009, and Bruce Pritchard and I were then going around. It wasn't the best fit. Total extreme comedy, which isn't what either one of us did. We were both storytellers,
right?
And so I felt like we're not giving people what the marquee says. But here, I go out on a limb and say Bruce and I are two of the best
storytellers around.
And yet we're doing it in front of 18 people in Worcester. And I mean, we had the nice crowd in Vegas, but they had them scattered among the 3,000 seat theater that Elvis used to play. So it looked like nobody was there. A woman came to do a review, and it was basically positive, but it was the most scathing one-liner. She said, "The man who used to perform in front of tens of thousands now performs in front of tens of tens." And I went, ouch. First of all, that's not true. It is true a lot of the time, tens of tons. But in this case, we had about 350 people. They just looked so sparse in that cavernous building. But I was realizing that I was having trouble with my memory. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of doing these shows, especially in 2012 when I left TNA, but also during that time, it was like I realized I had to work on something because I could feel myself slipping mentally.
Okay, we got to run a timeout right now. I want to tell you about something I recently discovered this year. It's IWTV.live. It's independent wrestling's premier streaming service for live events and video on demand of past events. And man, if you saw Wheeler Yuta versus Daniel Garcia on AEW, well, check out IWTV.live, as they had an even better match for the IWTV title. And you can even check out the likes of Eddie Kingston, Masato Tanaka, Jonathan Gresham, and so many more for just $10 a month. IWTV.live offers 20 plus events streamed live each month from the top independent wrestling. And by the way, just this past week, they had 10 live events. That's like $1 an event, y'all. There's no better value in wrestling streaming today. Also, as an IWTV.live subscriber, you have immediate access to our extensive library of over 13,000 hours of video on demand content from over 300 independent wrestling promotions from around the world, including Beyond Wrestling, Prestige Wrestling, Absolute Intense Wrestling, and H2O. You can watch IWTV.live anytime, anywhere on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV Stick, including mobile apps for Apple and Android devices. There's no long-term contracts, so go to IWTV.live and subscribe today for just $10 a month. Y'all, if you love wrestling, you're going to love IWTV.live. It's just $10 a month right now. Your first appearance on screen for TNA was during the build for Bound for Glory 2008. Meltzer would say this: Angle came out and said Jarrett was washed up and challenged him to a match at Bound for Glory. Jarrett turned it down, saying he doesn't have it in him anymore, but he knows someone who will accept the challenge. And Mick Foley was shown on the screen. He said just bang, bang, and the show ended, leaving one with the idea that it would be Angle versus Foley at the pay-per-view. Of course, we know things are going to change there, but what did you think about the way they introduce your character into TNA?
I like that. I don't remember it sounds like a little bait and switch. We would never do that.
Not in wrestling.
Not in wrestling.
Come on.
But I knew that I would not be having a match until a few months after that. When I got into the heat of things with Sting, I liked it. I really liked a lot about TNA, including the idea that I could bring my kids and they could go on rides in between shows. Like,
it's your dream job.
This is it's like Neverland come to life, you know? Like when I was busy, I remember sending my kids out with Kurt Angle and his kids, and they're riding the Mummy at Universal. Like this is, it's the ultimate playground.
Yes.
You know, I would walk through the Dr. Seuss, Grinchmas set. I remember calling Cindy Lou Who over because she'd waved and she was a fan. And then she got reprimanded for venturing out or whatever. And I remember Bubba Ray coming over, eavesdropping on my conversation. Like, only in wrestling can Cindy Lou Who be having a conversation with the hardcore legend. And that was December, but in October, you would have every one of the Frankensteins and every one of the werewolves getting made up 15, 20 yards from where we were doing our thing. And so it was kind of like a surreal world there where we moved to Florida. So I'm only working, I'm working 4 days every 2 weeks. And it was good. Catering can't touch WWE. WWE is in a league of their own when it comes to catering.
When you actually appear in front of a live crowd, Meltzer would say this of your first in-person appearance on TNA. Foley came out to the expected big pop. It was about as big a reaction as you're going to get in that building. He didn't say much, just kind of joking that he wanted to thank Jeff for signing him and Vince McMahon for making it all possible and making it an easy decision. Meltzer would say, it was a funny remark that seemed to go over the crowd's head. Given the context of what you just explained, that's hilarious and super inside.
I know one of the criticisms that bothered me was the idea that we should not be mentioning WWE because they didn't mention us. And it's like, that's because McDonald's doesn't mention Burger King, but Burger King does mention McDonald's.
Absolutely.
Like, I think, you do mention the big dog. It didn't behoove Vince to mention us. But behoove is a good word. I think it was in our best interest to mention the competition.
So Bound for Glory 2008 comes around, and Meltzer would say Foley did a lot of comedy vignettes during the show. He was hanging in Jim Cornette's office as Cornette had to do some business. The beautiful people showed up and complained about the color of the M&Ms in their dressing room. Of course, that's an old joke. Then Velvet Sky made fun of Foley for having dandruff. Later, we see some ladies come out, and you're going to say something like, it doesn't matter what you think, doing the old rock nod. But it's essentially a series of comedy vignettes here with some of the different talent from AJ Styles to the Dudleys. Is this what your expectation was, that they wanted more of the Commissioner Mick Foley, even if it was on the pay-per-view?
I don't think I had a defined role. Was I an enforcer? I can't remember if I actually did something. So yeah,
you do come down as a ringside enforcer for the Jeff Jarrett Kurt Angle match. But I guess what I'm trying to drive at is there's so many different, pardon the pun, faces of Foley.
Yeah.
You can get the hardcore legend, you can get the crazy deranged Mankind, or maybe you couldn't there, but you could Cactus Jack. And then you could also be just this lovable Mick Foley commissioner character.
You know what would really serve me well as commissioner is, and more so when I was the lovable version of Mankind, not the dark boiler room Mankind, but I explained even to Randy Orton, because there were some people who thought, all right, you're showing weakness, you're allowing him to show weaknesses, and some people took issue with that. But I said, Randy, here's the deal. Like, I have an idea of where I want to be. My happy place is being that commissioner guy, the guy who's happy, has the weak sense of humor, or strong, depending on how you look at it. But I will do whatever I need to do to get back to that happy place. So if I have to become Cactus Jack, I will do it in order to once again arrive at this place, because that's the guy I wanted to be. But I think when you're in a new place, there's not always, because some people come in with an exact idea of what they wanted to do, and this didn't apply to, Mankind when I started. But at that point, I think I was just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what worked. I didn't get the flannel shirt back because Bubba Ray was wearing the flannel. So I was wearing chamois. And I think my best line of the night was when I told Jeremy Borash that he made Gene Okerlund seem subtle.
As we said, you're scheduled to be the ring enforcer for Kurt Angle versus Jeff, but it's a decision that comes with some issues. You and Steve Mongo McMichael were both scheduled to be ringside enforcers for their respective matches, but Mongo was changed to being the actual referee, and apparently it drew some complaints from the wrestlers in the Monsters Ball tag team match for the TNA titles because Mongo, well, just wasn't a great referee.
There's an art, there's a definite art to refereeing, and it's difficult to do.
They wind up selling out something called Total Nonstop Interaction. It's an event the day before at the Hyatt Regency, which is known for these sort of things, I guess. And that environment, you get to really interact with the TNA fan base, really for the first time. And you had been around the WWE fan base at this point for over 10 years. And this is now, I wouldn't call it a startup at this point, but they certainly don't have the 50-year legacy or heritage of the WWF or what have you. Was it refreshing to hang out with this group of fans who was familiar with you, but boy, they're all trying to support this new idea?
It was. And I think when I did media, I said it reminded me of the old ECW days, not in the style in the ring, but of the sense that we were all pulling for each other and that we were the underdog. And Dixie really believed in the interactive experience. She wanted people to know that when they went to a TNA show, that they would be like an inclusive. They weren't just a spectator; they were part of the action. So they did like 4 or 5 guys would go out at the end of every night around ringside for free, in addition to VIP opportunities. I think they may have overdone it, where it stopped being special to meet a wrestler at a show, but I think the intentions were really good. And I think a lot of people saw it as a different experience than WWE. Like, you can't, I would say, this is what I came up with, was like, you're never going to out Jello brand gelatin, right? They're so ubiquitous that they are synonymous with flavored gelatin. Most people aren't even aware that there is a Knox flavored gelatin, right? Am I right? So it becomes really difficult to break into the Jello marketing business when one company, WWE, has it all wrapped up. So when I finally did talk to Vince, he called me to let me know that Luna Vachon had passed away. And he left a message on my machine. He said, "I know you don't like me, but I know how much you love Luna." And I called him back and I said, "I do like you." And we had a long talk. And I said, "You know what frustrates me, Vince?" I said, "We have, with the exception of 4 or 5 guys, we've got more name recognition on our roster." Because I was looking specifically at Elimination Chamber. So this is probably February 2010, probably, when I had this conversation with him. Like I said, been a year and a half. I said, "I'm looking at your Elimination Chamber." I said, "There's only 3 or 4 names out of those 10, that I think are up there with Booker and Scott Steiner and me and Jeff and Kurt." I said, "But you guys have the name, right? It is impossible." Yes. Well, AEW is proving it's not impossible.
It's impossible to topple them, but it's not impossible to be different than.
Yes.
I do want to ask about, this match in particular, because you're going to become involved. Surprise, Rudy Charles goes down, and that gives you, as the ringside enforcer, an opportunity to take over as the ref. Jarrett uses the stroke. Angle kicks out. Angle uses a low blow and gets a chair. And Meltzer would say he nailed Foley way too hard in the head with a chair. I know it's Foley's MO, and that's what made him, but you could do it harder to the back and do less damage. Foley didn't even try to block it.
It's not true.
Okay.
Because I think it was a German magazine shows me, look, I was quick. Nobody else was taking chairs to the side of the face. but I wasn't a sadist. Like, I get that thing up, even if it's just 3 fingers here. If I could block 90% of it, which I did, and it's this crazy now dichotomy where it used to be you're trying to convince people that anything you did was real, and now you're actually making the case that it wasn't as bad as it looked, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that would really bother me. I respect Dave. It's like, without even making the faintest attempt, it's like, I blocked it. You can see. And so I felt absolved when I saw the German magazine where it makes it look like it was obvious because they've got the frame by frame. And comes by in the blink of an eye. Like, you go back to watch the match at Halloween Havoc with Vader, you're never going to see my hand come up because it's like, look, I don't brag about too much I did, and I'm not advocating anyone out there do that, because all it takes is to be off by a little bit and you're rattling your brain. But in that case, clearly I was like, it's not as bad as it looked, because it just looked like I had no regard for my own well-being when I did, but I also had a definite yearning to make sure the stuff I did, as limited as it was, looked good. And it did.
You're uniquely qualified to talk about this since you're the hardcore legend. I want to ask about chair shots.
Yeah.
A lot of folks believe, boy, after your Hell in a Cell, it's kind of all downhill, because how do you top it after that, right? Just the spectacle.
Yeah.
And now that we've seen for so many years the crazy unprotected chair shots, and we know that was not good, and we've learned and we've gotten better, now it feels like you can't do a chair shot over the head. A few years ago, Cody and Sean Spears tried it, and there was some backlash at Cody about it. And it feels like the only time chairs are involved now are if it's a shot to the back. But that, as a fan who's been watching their whole life, even though I understand it, feels less than. So it makes me wonder, is it time to just move away from chairs completely? If we can't do what we used to do with them, and it's always going to be less than, should we?
But I think there's a whole new generation that's grown up watching the chair shots to the back and accepting it. And you get almost as much bang for the buck without the threat of permanent injury. And when these guys are sailing those chairs into the back, I'm talking about, it's almost, you can ask Road Dogg, just ask him blindly, what's the hardest chair shot you've ever seen? I'm going to give you even money. He says, Undertaker hitting Mankind in the back at the Garden, because he had that big wingspan and it just came down and it sounded like somebody was cracking a whip. And you could feel it, right? I think it can get overdone, where love Edge, right? And I don't want to be the critical guy. Drew McIntyre.
Yes.
Love Drew. But Drew wore out Jinder Mahal's, his Veer Mahan and the other guy with multiple like 20
Yes.
chair shots to the back, all of them hard, the chairs all warped and bent. And I was like, that's not the match, right? Like, you save that because there's real pain involved. It stings. You're going to be okay a few days later, but we've all seen the guys come back after being waylaid with a chair in the back, and they've got red bar signs,
welts
everywhere, and it hurts. It doesn't. So I'm okay with the chairs to the back. I don't think we need to move away from it. I'm telling you, man, I would just tell the guys, you swing it as hard as you can. It's on me to get my hand up. And not every time was I successful. And when I wasn't, it paid the price for it. And I don't want anyone thinking, well, Mick Foley did it, and he looks back on it like it was cool. But I think at that time there was that macho part that exists in all of us, no matter how humble we might try to seem. I don't put up the hand. And part of the reason I didn't put up the hand is I believe I broke the tip of my thumb in world class.
Yeah.
Put it up, and I'm wrestling in a splint for weeks, and I was like, I believe my head. And at the time when I was in world class, you're trying to win over one convert at the time. So we got the corrugated aluminum in the sportatorium, and the fans would follow you back to the dressing room. And there was a section that just had nothing but dents in it because I would slam my head into the corrugated aluminum. And 8 times out of 10, I would hit a good spot. 2 times out of 10, I hit a stud. And that's just to try to get somebody to say to one other person, hey, you know what I saw? Like, you're trying to win them over. This is in an era, I remember Abdullah the Butcher being on a plane, and the woman, Mary, you could get on a plane at that time with a ticket that said A Butcher, like no Larry Shreve. Early Butcher. 90s, I used to send my mom a ticket with my name on it that wasn't even to the destination. You handed someone a paper ticket, they let you on the plane back in those days. But Abdullah, I remember seeing Abdullah, he's sitting a couple seats away from me. He sees the flight attendant coming, and she goes to ask him what to drink, and he's like convulsing, and he's blinking his eyes. And after he's like, you gotta do it, champ. You gotta get people talking. So just that one person who might tell another person, you were in the word of mouth grassroots game when you were trying to build up your character at a time when there was still a real question about what may or may not be real.
This past weekend, Mick and I were in Chicago, and I had some folks coming through the meet and greet line, and I'll never, ever forget this. It happened to Foley. He talked about it on the show. Well, it happened to me. Like a 17-year-old young man came through the line and said, hey, Conrad, it's like a hot tag for your wiener. Everybody knows about Bluechew, boys and girls. They are our sponsor today, and we are so glad to bring you a fantastic offer. You've heard us talk about Bluechew from day one. If you haven't tried it yet, what are you waiting for? Bluechew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as both Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Now you can take these dudes anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is simple. You sign up at bluechew.com, you consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. So no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. And Bluechew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. But there won't be anything discreet about your package. Seriously. Bluechew is a day one advertiser here, and they keep coming back each and every week because our listeners, just like you, give it a try, and they realize, buddy, this is the next level. You will feel this. I'm telling you, you will feel that this is, well, fun. I don't know another way to say it. If you're looking for more fun, look no further. If you can benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, Bluechew can help. Check out this special deal for you guys. Try Bluechew free when you use our promo code Foley at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's it. Bluechew.com. The promo code is Foley. You'll receive your first month free when you visit Bluechew.com for more details and safety information. And we want to thank Bluechew for sponsoring the podcast. Seriously, guys, just go take a look. Bluechew.com. Promo code is Foley. Just pay the $5 shipping. Try it. It's the most fun you can have for $5. Well, fast forward, and they know you very well. We no longer need word of mouth. You're a TV star, and you're here towards the end of the match, and you pull out Mr. Sacco. And this is a WWE special, but here we are on TNA, and you're pulling a sock out of your pants, and
it was the sock.
Here comes the sock!
He's got the sock. Mike TNA, who I have reason to believe is not a real professor.
I don't believe he is either. I think that's just rumor and innuendo. I am curious, though. I mean, that feels like something WWE would have protected. Did you look into that and figure out what you could or couldn't do? Or
I think I even said somewhere, like, we're lining up for this stupidest lawsuit of all time for whether a guy can pull a sock out of his pants.
Because it's silly.
It's silly, but I didn't draw on it. It was just a sock.
So if there's no face, it's just a sock.
It was in my head, at least. And now, I don't know if we're going to get to this, but I get this strange call from Kevin Dunn. Mick, we understand you have a book coming out. We want to promote it for you. You do? He goes, and we'd like Joey Styles to do an interview with you. I'm almost sure it was Joey. He's like, you do? So I'd gone, a year and a half without talking to Vince. Now I remember we lived in a condo in Florida for a year. They had a great TV room, taking my kids to watch the WWE show so they could hear the announcers go, our good friend Mick Foley's got a new book out here. And Dixie's head was spinning, I think I wrote it what I saw as, a nice, innocent lunch with an old friend may have appeared like I was having a hot, a fling with a former love. And I think it would be safe to say that for a period of time, I was looked at as being difficult to deal with, stemming from, listen, I had this benefit I was doing for Rain, right? And for 2 years, most important thing in my life at that time was my volunteer work for Rain. That's no kidding. I was making a good living. I wanted to do well in the ring, but I was on that hotline 8 to 10 hours a week, fielding some of the most difficult questions, not just questions, but just dealing with people at their darkest hour and trying to make a difference in their lives, and occasionally trying to talk someone into staying alive.
Right.
And so we had a fundraiser we called 10 for Rain. We're asking people to donate $10. And Dixie very, very generously, big donated $10,000. I said, Dixie, I've got another $10,000 donation. She said, that's great, Mick. Who's the problem? I said, Vince McMahon. Look, if Dixie's listening, I am so sorry that I made her life, because I'm supposed to be the easy guy to deal with, right? I do want to tell you one story about the difference. This is going to be seen, and you know where I'm going with this, right? This is a great, some people, I think there was a tendency to put stuff down because it was TNA.
Yes. LOL TNA.
Yeah, without accepting that we did some really good stuff.
Absolutely.
So here's a storyline. Hogan comes aboard. I'm the only guy who's not happy about it. I'm very, very cautious about Hulk Hogan's motives. And Kevin Nash tells me, look, he goes, I had to pull some strings, but I got you a meeting with Hulk. I said, you do? He goes, you got to fly out to California. And he hands me a ticket. And the storyline's got three layovers. So we show up, this beautiful house in the Hollywood Hills. And I say, I'm here to meet Hulk. And in walks Lou Ferrigno.
Oh, wow.
He says, hey, Mick, you ready to talk? I said, yeah, I'm here to meet Hulk. He goes, I am Hulk. I said, I know you are a Hulk, but I'm here to meet the Hulk. And he says, Mickey, he goes, I am the Hulk. I am the only Hulk. And I start to lose my cool. I start, oh, damn it. You sent me out here across country. And now you're no, this is not on you. Love seeing you at the conventions. Looked up to you. And Lou, this is a great line. He goes, Mickey, don't get angry. I wouldn't like you when you're angry. This is like a stroke of genius, right? This is and I've got JB, who is, JB was so much fun to be around. But the difference between TNA and WWE shows itself, and Barry knows exactly where I'm going with this, is that I'm asking, and again, it pains me because I love Dixie. And if she's listening, look, over the course of time, 98%, 92% positive memories. But in this case, Lou's wife goes, do you have Lou's money? And I went, excuse me? What? She goes, Lou can't do it unless he's paid. I went, I don't have any money for Lou. I said, how much is it? And she tells me the money. And there's a promoter named Dave Hero I just ran into backstage. And I'd just done Dave's Blizzard Brawl. And I had the exact amount in my pocket that Lou needed. So I hand over this stack of cash, and I pay Lou. We do the thing. I go back and I ask if I can be reimbursed. And Terry Taylor, another guy I love, goes, do you have a receipt? And I went, no, I don't have a receipt. Well, we can't reimburse. I was like, oh, what are you talking about? You can't reimburse me. This is where I got mad. I was like, you want to know what the difference between you guys and WWE is? Difference is that the moment I told Vince McMahon that I had to pay Lou Ferrigno out of my pocket, they would have had a check on their way. You know, like that was I was a little angry about that. And it took, how long did it take, Barry? 10 weeks? 8 or 10 weeks to get and I look back on it now and it's just.
Terry Taylor thought you might have had a receipt book on you as well.
Well, at least have Lou write out that. So keep in mind.
Who else is with you? You're not also running camera, right?
JB's running camera.
And JB doesn't step in as an office person and handle that?
He doesn't have the money.
So he just says, Mick, do you have the money?
I can't remember. I don't want to make JB look like the fall guy at all. But you have to just trust me when I say I loved the Incredible Hulk, right? Like I had an almost unblemished streak of like, I've got Hulk 181, the Wolverine origin story. The problem is I cut out the Marvel trading stamp, which takes it down from like $3,000 to like $150 or something. But I love the Hulk. And then when the Lou came on, you know, in the late 70s with the live actions, it was just my favorite show. So now I'm in a position where I have Lou Ferrigno saying to me, don't get angry, Mickey. I wouldn't, this is like, I couldn't even dare dream this, but it was just, I don't think I did get angry with Terry, but for the most part, and Terry was really good to me, and all these things have been soothed over.
Sure.
But now I see the surreal nature of it and look back on it like, wow, I wouldn't trade that story for the world. Like, I'm so glad they didn't just hand me I'm so glad Lou hadn't been paid and we just did everything.
I'm so glad Dave Hero gave you a bunch of cash. You were just ready to run.
Otherwise, I would have gone home after that. And now I get hot and come back, and Kevin Nash and I had a brawl around the empty studio. I was angry. I didn't see the humor in it. As on TV, I didn't see the humor in it. But it was a good time. It was a good time. It was really.
Take me back to that Bound for Glory show. The first time you're at a big TNA event, they did the whole interaction thing. You're getting to meet some of the talent. Had you been watching the program?
I had been.
Okay. Did you start because you thought you might go there, or you were a regular consumer?
I was fairly regular. I thought the knock I had is I thought they tried to do too much with their one show. I thought they tried to do too many angles so that nothing meant as much as it could have.
They didn't let anything breathe. A lot of crash TV, one segment after another.
Well, just an example is that, and I don't think Jeff loved MMA Jeff Jarrett, but I loved the presentation of MMA Jeff Jarrett.
Phenomenal.
It was so well done.
Hilarious.
He's got the entourage. He's going to children's
Taekwondo or whatever. It's fantastic.
He's kicking butt. He's taking names. So I liken it to Rick Rude going a full year or more of kissing women on TV before it comes to what's this bag of bones, this old man of yours. What's his name? Jake. And it's Cheryl Roberts.
Right.
And it's, wow, it means so much. I thought Jeff could have been MMA Jeff for a full year before Kurt Angle challenges him. And it was just over in the blink of an eye.
I wish he was still MMA Jeff today. It was great stuff.
It was the fact that I've likened the world of wrestling to being like the rotating belt of sushi that comes around, right?
Yes.
You can grab as much as you want, whenever you want, and it's always there for you, but you very rarely get to digest something and enjoy the homemade nature of it. And I think that WWE rushes storylines as well. And when they do have something that comes to fruition, like Becky and Bianca, it's such a breath of fresh air. I think we'll see more of that.
Yeah.
Under Triple H's guidance. But TNA to me ran through angles. Case in point, I beat Sting, and to this, Jeremy Boresh texted me about 3 days ago with the line, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make your day." It's so condescending, like, thank you for allowing me to make your day. He came home with me, and I had a concussion after that match. Him and Vince Russo slept over my house after I threw up in the parking lot on the way home from Philadelphia. And the next day, JB's filming. At that time, he said it was the most funny to have doing vignettes because I'm out there with my kids waiting for the bus, and I'm wearing the big TNA title belt. And I'm talking about the Stitcheroonies. So I'd never done the running knee in the corner in a cage match. And it turns out, you wonder what happens to your head when you run into the, well, usually it just goes into the air. But in this case, clang, and I've got this big, laceration over the eyebrow. And I'm playing it for all it's worth, the Stitcheroonies. And that's where I believe I gave Kurt Angle the line, where Stitcheroonies, 26 Stitcheroonies, I won an Olympic gold medal with a broken freaking neck. I don't think he'd said that before then. And I think I had something to do with it. But the series of vignettes going through the airport metal detector with the title belt on it, someone else did it a year or two after me, but I believe that was mine. Trying to give my blind massage therapist a 1 and telling her it was a 20. Like, it was just fun stuff. And I was like, I could have been that Mick Foley for 4 or 5 months.
Right.
And boom, 1 month later.
Yeah.
God. And that was the downside, is just trying to please everybody, trying to do too much, trying to get a payday. I don't believe the talent got paid unless they were on TV.
A lot of the guys were on a per appearance.
So, and to their credit, they would try to get them the paydays, but it meant having everybody and their brother on every show.
NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Woo!
The 5-star reviews are in, and it's confirmed. SaveWithConrad.com can save you thousands. Jimmy E writes that we saved his family more than $1,000 a month. James S says we saved his family more than $1,200 a month. But how much can you save? It's free to find out right now at SaveWithConrad.com. But if you've got a second mortgage, if you've got credit card debt, or even worse, if you're in a 30-year loan, it's not a matter of if we can save you money, but a matter of how much at SaveWithConrad.com.
Case in point, Ric Flair and I do that segment, which will go down history as the bloodiest interview segment of all time. Terry Taylor just comes up to us, goes, you guys have 10 minutes, just do that thing between you that only you two understand. We recognize this great chemistry. So Terry leaves, and I go, okay, Rick, I'm going to ask you for a last man standing match and make me work for it. He goes, I will. That's all we know. We get out there in the ring, and Rick's got that paper thin scar tissue. He says, hammering at it, and he's just bleeding profusely. And I'm thinking, all right, I don't have the same scar tissue as Rick, but Robert Fuller told me how to open up an eyebrow, and doggone it, I'm not going to be outdone by Ric Flair. And I start whacking downward on my own eyebrow, and now I've got a trickle, the trickle, but it's good stuff. And I thought, given that what Rick and I did and the intensity of the promo, that we should have altered, we should have referred back to it, talked about this match, made it something, and it was just like there was just too much. So it was the sushi conveyor going around without giving our patrons a chance to really enjoy something.
We knew in WWE, the ultimate decision, like where the buck stops, it's Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
No two ways about that. Did you feel like in TNA it was Dixie Carter, or was, Jeff Jarrett's there and obviously Spike's involved, and then there's Dixie's parents, and we heard that at different times Vince Russo had influence. What was that like?
Hey, you know what? It seemed to me like Russo and Cornette coexisted.
Yeah.
There, and they had this epic parking lot brawl that took like 30 minutes. So, and it was really well done, where it was like it just descended into mayhem. But there was camera shots going all over the place and covering up for me. I couldn't really do that much at that time, but I did enough when the camera was on me to look like I wasn't just waiting for my spot. But it was this crazy brawl, the likes of which I'd never seen. I thought that we were doing some good stuff. Not as often as we should have, but I was a fierce defender and a believer in TNA up until I regret that at a certain point. I started blaming the company for what it wasn't instead of appreciating it for what it was.
That's great perspective. I hope everybody
So when I left the company So I go up to Terry Taylor, and I've got a year left on it. Barry knows exactly where I'm going to go. I know we're all over the place, and you said we could talk about TNA, but this is, I believe this was aided by the head injuries. Because keep in mind, this is a downturn in the economy, and I'm making a good living.
Yeah.
I'm trying at the time to start really working on the one-man show because I know I'm having these head issues, and I feel like I'm muted, like my whole life is taking place underwater, like nothing is as sharp as it should be. And I said to Terry one day, I said, remember when Bill Watts would say, hey, if you're not happy with the company, then get out. And he goes, yeah. I said, I'd be that guy getting up and getting out. And he looked at me, I said, if they'd made a accounting mistake and were paying me a little more than the contract called for. I thought it was because I'd done so many extra matches, but it was an accounting mistake. And so they wanted me to give back a little bit of it. I said, Terry looked at me and I said, you know how you want a little bit of that money back? He said, yeah. I said, just keep it all. And I said, I lost faith in the company a long time ago. And I look back on it now, I was like, I'm a dad. I've got 4 kids. I've got college to pay for. I'm making a good living. And I just give it up. And they said at the time, hey, let's try to make this work. And then the wild card comes in that I think there was an angle going on involving an I Quit match in WWE at the time. And maybe they were playing off what I did with Rock with the pre-recorded I Quit. And I have to speculate that it just got to him just briefly. So he put out something that somebody asked about the I Quit match. And he said, yeah, I hit Mick Foley 11 times. He bled. I won. And I was like, ooh, that kind of stung a little bit. You know, that's not very Dwayne Johnson-like. And now in I can only say is like an example of Sigmund Freud's theory of transference. I now take out the hurt I feel on a completely innocent party, which is TNA. And I'd say, maybe so at The Rock. But 2 weeks later, I regained that WWE title in an empty arena match, AKA a TNA house show. And a day later, Barry calls me and goes, I heard from TNA. I said, yeah. He goes, they don't want you. Now, the correct thing for me to do was to get on the phone and say to Dixie, I'm sorry, and then explain Freud's theory of transference. And I say, what I did was an insult to everybody who goes out in the ring and works hard. Everybody who sets, I was wrong. It was definitely wrong. And instead, I let pride get the better of me. Fine. And the one little catch was they kind of wanted me to sign something saying I wouldn't talk ill of the company. And I said, well, I didn't do that for Vince. And talking ill of the company is kind of subjective, And so the next day I wrote probably a 3,000-word article called Leaving Without an Impact. And it was about, the basis of it is the line I used. Should have appreciated it for what it was instead of wishing it was something it wasn't, looking at all the guys that had gotten their breaks or had been allowed the right to continue to make a good living. In some cases, it was just like a vacation from the WWE fans who either don't know you're there or know you're there, but are just fine waiting for you to come back to the environment they like you in. And I really look at Dixie as being one of the unheralded heroes of our business because of the faith she had in that company. At this point when she was getting so much criticism, I was like, what a group of self-loathing people we are, where we're reaching out and lashing out at this woman who's made the livings for 100 people
Created so many jobs, so many opportunities.
I'll go out on a limb, I'll say, I don't think it's going out very far on a limb. Without Dixie Carter, the world doesn't know Samoa Joe.
Or AJ Styles.
AJ Styles. These guys probably would have had to make a living in some other means, because without the name value, you could do 3-4 tours of Japan, and Joe could work any style. AJ is one of the great workers in the history of our business. I don't know if people would know who they were. And I don't know if they would have been hired. At a certain point, all of the up-and-coming stars, no, not all of them, but a good portion of the younger base in WWE were talent that had gotten their break in TNA.
They put the Bucks on TV first.
Yeah, the Young Bucks, right? The
there's
Bucks
so many great.
Yeah. And these poor kids, I say poor kids, that's almost what they were at the time, even though they were married, had children. They're flying and coach every week, 6 hours. They had people tripling up and quadrupling at the Holiday Inn, and just trying to get. To this day, I maintain that if ODB had come along 7 years, like she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Every time Al Snow was asked who's ready, he would say ODB. No, we're not interested. ODB would have been like the female Stone Cold.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, she was a standout as it was, and one of the coolest and nicest and the most unique people you could ever meet. But she would have been a megastar. We had the Knockouts were delivering main event matches.
Far better than the WWE Women's Division.
Long before the Revolution, these women were main eventing.
Shout out to Gail Kim.
Gail Kim,
unbelievable.
What a consummate professional and ultimate babyface in those matches with Awesome Khan. Barry knows that. I remember one of the little knocks on me is I didn't go to bat often enough for talent, and I was like, that's because when I do go to bat, I want it to mean something. So I didn't badger Vince very often, but when I did, it meant something. And so I was one of the guys in his ear, called him up. I said, Awesome Khan, I know she's unconventional, not the type of talent, you usually feature. I said, but she's an outstanding talent and a really fine young lady. And she was poised to have this huge break, as karma. It didn't work out. But that doesn't diminish any of the things she did. So again, looking back on it, it was this amazing escape. And I'm disappointed in myself. And I think it was a real lesson in appreciating what you have. I don't mean for this thing to be a downer. Can I give you 2 high note things?
Yes, I want to do some questions.
Yeah. You want to do that, and I'll save. Just remind me, I've got 2 high notes I want to go out on.
Matthew Prong wants to know, what are some of the things you were looking forward to doing at TNA? Is there any one thing?
I would have loved to have done that X Division thing. I think looking back on it, if I had come in with that, I'm Mick Foley. I just purchased the X Division. That it could have made a difference. So I wish I'd done that, and I wish I'd stuck around long enough to have a match with Hulk Hogan. So 2 types of people in the world: those who acknowledge that being in the ring with Hulk is a big deal, and those who pretend it isn't. But I did 2 promos in the ring with him. It's a pretty freaking big deal. I know Hulk's made some mistakes, and
I'm only here because of Hulk Hogan. He's the reason I became a wrestling fan. He was my favorite wrestler as a kid.
And I don't know if I've said this before, but when it comes down to it, and Hulk, one time, he was a scathing insult, right? On Canadian television. And I could never dislike Hulk Hogan because I remember Shane Douglas telling me every single day Hulk would be backstage with those Make-A-Wish children, and they had never been happier in their lives. And I was like, I don't care if he doesn't have a style that, you heard me say that, I've got a dirty word.
Yeah.
Hogan-esque, and I always gets the pop. So yeah, I will use the Hulkster to get a laugh. But at the end of the day, he is, and I understand he used a racial, that's, really unfortunate. And even then I said, I think he's a good man who made a mistake.
Yes.
And it's like, hey, that wasn't a mistake.
Not for us to say.
Not for us to say. But I say, that what Hulk did with those children and giving them one of the best moments of their lives repeatedly, in the same way that John Cena does.
Sure.
That's who Hulk Hogan is to me. That guy. Imperfect, like we all are, right?
Yeah.
Made a mistake and had his mistakes on video and audio, which is really unfortunate. But I wish I'd stuck around to have the match with Hulk. And it was a really big deal. And when I got to know him a little bit more, I really liked him. And every time I see him, he said, "Brother, when are we going to have that dinner?" I was like, "We're going to do it, Hulkster," So I do. I read his book, and I always thought because he was larger than life that he couldn't be injured, emotionally. It's not the case.
True.
Not the case.
Sean Daniels wants to know, what was your immediate impression on day one with TNA compared to WWE? Besides
It
catering.
was the catering. Yeah, it was the you can't even compare the two. WWE.
What did you think of the 6-sided ring?
It was stiffer.
Yeah.
It was stiffer. It did make the company stand out.
Mhm.
I know when Eric came in, we went back to the 4-side. I still love the 4.
We all do.
Yeah, it was cool. I don't know. I was okay with it. I wasn't a big fan, but I wasn't a detractor, and it was different for sure.
Hazard F5 wants to know, what was your deciding factor in joining TNA, and what did you want to accomplish there? And lastly, how much creative input did you have?
I was led to believe the catering would be better.
What did you want to accomplish in TNA?
I wanted to make a difference. I wonder if I had not been given that one line on Mick Foley, "I'm here to buy the X Division," if I would have bought into it, the company. I don't know, because I really wanted to do that. That was the difference I wanted to make. I wanted to try to elevate people. So I remember being knocked, for being in Sting, and it's like two old guys with titles. Like, dude, you want to turn you're going to be given a run with Sting, a chance to wrestle one of the guys who was so instrumental in my career, and also with the idea that we're going to try to create attention for this company.
Right.
But that was the main thing. I wish we had followed through with the original plan.
Did you have any creative input?
I did. I had a lot of creative input, but I also realized that I got a little lazy. I did not attend booking meetings. So I was like chiming in from the outside without being on the inside where I really would have been welcomed. And I didn't do it. So I had a lot of input in that. Almost all the promos are mine. Vince Russo was a bullet point guy. I did sometimes veer into silliness because it entertained me. But I thought, when it came time to do the serious promos, that I delivered on some good things while I was there.
One last one, and then we'll give your 2 high point stories. Robert wants to know, do you watch the product now? And if so, what do you think of it?
The Impact product?
Yes. Not
Not as much as I should, especially because when I do watch it, I think it's really good. And I think Scott D'Amore has done a lot.
Yes.
And should have a lot of credit. By the way, a shout out to Joe Doring, whose brain cancer, I guess, is back. And just wishing him the best.
Universally loved.
Yeah, praying for a full recovery. He was a guy who was told he'd never wrestle again. He was back within a year.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a prayer, please, Joe could use it.
So talk to us about these good memories that you wanted to share with us, these high points of TNA.
So I'm terrified of working with Kurt Angle, right?
Right.
Just terrified. And I know I can't deliver on the level that Kurt is used to delivering. So I think Meltzer gave me and Kurt 2.5 stars, but it was a major triumph for me because I didn't fail and fall on my face like I thought I could have. Because Kurt, he's a machine, right? He's just a wrestling machine. And we came back the next day with the pole match. I think it was the next day or 2 days later. And I remember my children, the younger children, being in there. And my son Mickey had taken to booing me when I came out, to the point where I looked up in the garden because I knew they were like in section 112. And I look up when I'm in the Royal Rumble 2012 and I see him up there and he's got his thumb down and he's booing me. It's like a rib on his dad. But in this case, when I have to climb up that pole, I look out and Mickey's going, oh, Dad, I'm like, get up there. And Kurt and I we had a really good match. And I don't know if Booker remembers this, but I remember at the time he was really moved by it. I said, Kurt, can I have a word with you? And he said, sure. So there was like this little room where about 6 of us changed. And I said, Kurt, I want to thank you for giving me something these past couple of days. He goes, what's that, Mick? I said, my confidence. I said, I went from feeling like I could never have a good match to feeling like, you know what? I got Mick freaking Foley. I'm going to be okay. 100% or not. And Booker, I remember Booker going, that's cool, man. That's really cool. And the other, I think, high note is that when I was coming back to Nashville after maybe a year or 2 away from TNA, I reached out to Dixie and said, hi, Dixie, it's Mick Foley. I'm going to be performing in Nashville. I want to see if you and Serge might want to come to the show. And I come back like 2 hours later and I see a response from Dixie that says, that's okay. And boom. And so for about an hour I'm driving, I was like, that was short and to the point. And then I realized that it's at the tail end of like a 300-word
Wow.
thing. And she's saying, wow, Mick, thanks so much for thinking of us. We would love to come to your show. We have something we have to do. And I'm not sure if we can be there for the whole thing, but we would certainly like to catch as much if we can, if that's okay. So, it's like after, after the trials and tribulations, it really meant a lot to me that Dixie and Serge came to the show. And they were they were proud of me. And Terry Taylor was sitting with them, and it was a good show. And, I would do this stupid line, and it was funny, though, where I was talking about Bubba Ray in Germany coming out after Awesome Kong had not. This is where you could have fun. Oh, my goodness, you could have fun on the house shows in a way you couldn't in WWE, because you could just kind of do whatever you wanted. And so they just hear me out here for this moment. It is a mixed tag match with Booker and Sharmell against somebody in Awesome Kong. Jeez, I can't remember who awesome. Oh, maybe it was Bubba. No, Devon and Awesome Kong. And Booker, he didn't want Sharmell wrestling, and they were going round and round, a little heated. But by God, when they got in that ring, and Booker started feeding a comeback for Awesome Kong, Booker had those high boots, and he always had the kick when he got lifted in the air. Like no one took a slam like Booker T. And I see those legs kicking, and Awesome Kong, when she splashed him and he kicked out in like a fraction of a second. Seriously, one of the loudest pops I've ever been part of. Somehow, and now Devon does the get the tables thing, but when he does, he ends up so, and they look at each other and they start making out in the ring, right?
Fantastic.
And I come in, and as a shoot, we had a day off, and I see that Tori Amos is playing Dusseldorf, Germany. It's 10 minutes from where we are. I make the phone call, and it's me and Awesome Kong going out for a romantic evening at the Tori Amos show. And so I end up saying to Kong, why I would say it in German, it's for the sake of the fans.
Sure.
Wir hatten schau zusammengegangen. We went there together, and then I sang a German love song. Du liebst mir in Herzen, du liebst mir in Sinn. Ich will something mir schmerzen. Weiß nicht, wie gut ich dir bin, which means, don't you know how good we could be together? And then I led the crowd in the ja, weiß nicht, wie gut ich dir. And I turn around and Awesome Kong steamrolls me, just flattens me, leaves the ring and leaves me laying. And that, as far as I know, is the end of our segment. And out comes Bubba Ray, and he's got Velvet in tow, and he goes, motorboat him. She's just like, what? And he channels like a combination of Vince McMahon and The Undertaker, and goes, motorboat him. And the next thing I know is Velvet's got her boobs, and here I said, I knew it was wrong. And I'm at a TNA house show, which meant there were literally dozens of witnesses. And it's such a good line.
It's a great line.
It's such a good line. And I think I said that even in front of Dixie. And it's a good joke. It's a good line. But that was the idea that after all this time, to this day, I'm still in touch with Dixie. And that means, it really means a lot to me that I went there. I did not appreciate it for what it was. I should have appreciated it more. I see Dixie as, like I said, one of the unsung heroes of our business who didn't have to believe in what we did. But for Jeff to say, hey, listen, we're going to have to call it quits. We don't have the money to pay. Dixie she was the PR, she was the PR person. She'd done PR for Charlie Pride and other different, country music stars. Jeff had no idea that her dad was such a fixture in alternative energy. He's like, I think I have a plan. And so you take this one woman who gives all of us an extra 7 years,
yes,
and leaves the company in a way that it's still continuing to put out a product. I look back on it, I was like, man, what a dick I was. Like, I've got Universal Studios. I can do what I want. I would know that a segment was going well in a house show if I looked over at Jeremy Borash and he was holding his face, because he was laughing so hard. Like,
yes.
We could do things that were so much fun. And so there's a lesson out there. It really is. It's just like, appreciate those good times, while they're happening, because you never know when they might end.
And why not celebrate them with a cameo? Of course, this is not a plug. It's
All
PSA.
right. So we're going to
special occasion.
Got something special here lined up. All right.
A birthday, an anniversary, a graduation. Go to cameo.com/Mick Foley. Don't do it on the app. Do it on the website.
Yeah, because Apple's got enough money. They don't need to take any of mine. So.
And as Mick's getting set up, I want to remind everybody, next week we're talking the Summer of Love. We'll continue to look back at 1997. We're coming off SummerSlam, which we just discussed last week. And now we'll talk about Dude Love going into Ground Zero. You're going to wind up having to vacate the tag team titles because of Steve Austin's injury. You're going to go over to England to work the One Night Only show. There's that whole Shawn Michaels British Bulldog mess. And of course, the debut of the one gimmick Vince McMahon thought he would never allow in the World Wrestling Federation. Next week, we're talking Cactus Jack and
yeah. What a glorious time. Hold on a second. Let me just see if I got this. Did you see me slip the reading glasses under the sunglasses?
It's an underrated move.
It's telling me I'm offline.
Weird Al
We do have the ability to edit this, right?
Yeah.
Son of a
We'll make it look
nutcracker.
good eventually.
Let me see if it's going to go. That's why I had to go inside to do a couple of these cameos. Oh, man, you talk about a week ending here. Oh, man. This would be like Superfly going to the top of the cage and then walking it down and coming off the bottom. All right, let me give it a try, see what's happening here.
I hope we post a still photo of what you look like at this very moment on social media a true behind-the-scenes peek at cameo.com/Mick Foley.
All right, you know what? Even if we can't actively do it, I can give you the song that I was working on. Okay?
More 5-star reviews of Will Ospreay this last month. Cameo.com/Mick Foley.
This is the duet you never knew you needed. Okay, so who am I going to be? Whose birthday is it out there? Can we just randomly?
It's Grillo's birthday.
Grillo's birthday. Grillo. All right, here's your birthday song. All right, ready? I'm talking about your birthday bash. It's a very special day. Everyone grooving merrily in the dudes in passion way. Oh yeah, I'm talking about your birthday bash. It's a mellow time of year. Listening to the dudes in this tune, all your blues are gonna disappear. Bye bye. You will get this kooky kind of feeling when you hear Cactus Jack say, I'm not begging, but save some cake for the hardcore legend. I'm talking about your birthday bash. I hope your big day's nice. Bang, bang. Everyone's eating birthday cake, but save Cactus Jack a slice. Oh, yeah. There you go. The duet you never knew you needed.
Bravo. Bravo.
Not quite the same as having the,
such a magical time. Such a transformative talent, you know? Just switching left and right. Will Ospreay could never do that. I mean,
I dare.
You ever see Bret Hart do that?
No,
I've never seen Bret
I've never
Hart
seen him do it.
I don't even think J.J. Dillon could do that.
I'm challenging Bill Ospreay to a cameo off. We'll
Cameo
see
off.
who gets more 5-star reviews. Yeah.
Can I tell you that you threw me for a swerve today during our show? We've done a bunch of these together.
How'd I do that?
I think this is the first time you've ever mentioned Al Snow, and it didn't lead to a joke.
Ooh.
I was so primed when you said Al would always get the question, hey, who's ready? And I was like, here it comes. Here it comes. And you gave a real answer in ODB. And I thought, wow, are we going to mention Al Snow and not have a dig
in the
at all?
spirit of Al Snow, you're always searching for ways to make a story better.
Absolutely.
So even if someone sees a show a few months apart, I go, kind of the same stories, but I'm always working to make, first of all,
a little better.
Changing the stories, working to make them better. And I tell this story. It's the only old story I tell about my WCW tryout match and how when I walked through the curtain, there appeared to be a gauntlet of some of the biggest stars of that era. And then sometimes I go, this is where I like the idea. I can give you my rendition of the fact. Truth is, probably 4 or 5 people hovered around. Like the chances that it was a gauntlet that I'm walking through, I said, I walked through a gauntlet of some of the biggest stars of that era. And then in Australia, I just tried it. And Buff Bagwell. And it gets the pop. I was like, technically, Buff didn't come into WCW until 2 years later. But does it really matter?
No.
No.
It's a great
For
job.
the next 2 nights, it was all about, can I just, I did mention that the person with Tourette's, right?
Yes.
Last week?
Yeah.
Just, Barry randomly. Yeah, F you. F off. F off. And then when I turn the light on and I see, Tourette syndrome. And I said, hey, as an autism dad, I'm just so glad you chose my show. Thank you very much. I hope you're having a great time. And timing couldn't have been any better. F you.
And boys and girls, if that doesn't earn us a 5-star rating, as our friend would say,
Ospreay, it's on.
we'll see you next week right here on Foley is Pod.